Well, it has definitely wound down quite a bit. Almost no supporters or protesters are here. But just a couple of hours ago, it looked nothing like this. The streets were blanketed with Trump supporters, I would say, for the most part, as opposed to people who don't support the former president. But people were here supporting him, making chants, honking as they drove by, dressed in Trump apparel, carrying flags, painting their cars, things of that nature, really out here to support them. But I will say the entire day really did remain very peaceful. The streets were able to stay open as the mayor and the police chief wanted to see just one quick closure when they thought they had a suspicious package. It's quite the juxtaposition, though, the craziness that we saw outside as the former president was ushered in to the very quiet, somber situation that we saw as he entered a not guilty plea to all 37 counts. Donald Trump became the first president Tuesday, former or current, to be arraigned on federal charges. 37 counts allege he jeopardized national security by holding on to top secret documents at his Florida estate. Hordes of police and Secret Service escorted Trump from his Doral Golf Club to the Wilkie D. Ferguson Courthouse in Miami shortly before 2 p.m. local time. Trump was joined by his defense attorney Todd Blanche and Christopher Keese. Keese was added to Trump's team just hours before his arraignment Tuesday as Trump struggled to find qualified Florida lawyers to represent him. Blanche received special permission to represent Trump despite not being admitted to the bar in South Florida. He was the one to address the judge. Special counsel Jack Smith was in the courtroom, as was his entire team, sitting front row. During his arraignment, Trump appeared with his valet, Walt Nauta, who is facing federal charges. They both pled not guilty before Magistrate Judge Jonathan Goodman. Overnight Monday, another judge denied all media requests to have phones or laptops in the courtroom. Photos and videos are also banned in federal court. But here's what we do know about Trump's booking process. It only took a few minutes and included digital fingerprinting and a photo that was uploaded into the court system. However, it was not a mugshot. While Trump's allies and supporters have condemned the indictment as a political hit job, Dave Ehrenberg, a state attorney in Palm Beach County, told Scripps News that pursuing the case in Florida shows no political motivation.
He could have gone to Washington, D.C., where Trump got 5% of the vote in 2020. But instead, he went to Trump's home state, a red state, and he got grand jurors from all walks of life to vote out the indictment. So it shows you that this is about the evidence and the law, not politics.
Trump is now on his way back to New Jersey, where he's expected to speak about the charges at 8 p.m. Eastern. Charges like these can carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. And really the only major hiccup during the entire 40-minute proceeding was that there was a bit of a fight between the prosecution and the defense about who the former president is allowed to speak to as this is all unfolding. Originally, the prosecution didn't want him to be able to speak to a list of people. They said that this list could include people who he works with, who work for him, even one of his own attorneys. And so there was a big back and forth about what was allowed. And they decided that the prosecution will put together a list of who the former president is not allowed to speak to about the facts of this case. So he'll still be able to communicate with people like Walt Nauta, who is his co-conspirator, according to the federal government. They still work together every single day, but they will not be allowed to discuss the facts of the case. So we are still waiting for that list. Other than that, we have not seen any other dates given to us about what we can expect in the future of this case.